Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live, the middle of the night or early morning bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's middle of the night or early morning bonus upload, shall we? Tonight's first encounter. I grew up with my grandparents in a quiet suburb outside of Washington, D.C., and our house was only a few hundred yards from a large park called Sleepy Hollow Woods. I used to always play in those woods as a child, alone or with friends, and never had any issues. I loved the outdoors and explored the woods thoroughly. However, I would never stay out after dark, of course. My mother grew up here as well, and would always tell stories about those woods and believed they were haunted. She had plenty of creepy things happen to her. For instance, when she was younger, they had 2 family labs. They were super friendly, and my mother and uncles would walk them through the woods all the time. One time, my mom was walking alone with the dogs around dusk, when she came across what she describes as a ripped-off deer haunch lying covered in blood in the middle of the trail. There were no other deer parts or body or blood anywhere to be seen, just this random bloody leg. She described it as having the appearance of being ripped off, definitely not cut. Obviously freaked out, she took the dogs and just started heading for home. All of a sudden, near the exit of the park, the dogs completely freeze in their tracks and just start growling into the tree line. This was very unlike them, as they were super friendly with both people and other animals, and were quite large and really never feared a thing. However, as my mom kept trying to pull them along and see what they were growling out at, their tails went behind their legs and they started to whimper, refusing to move forward. It was then my mom said she saw a large, almost 8-foot dark figure with glowing red eyes between the trees staring right at her. She immediately turned around with the dogs and fled, taking a different exit out of the woods. My uncle has also said he had seen the red-eyed giant before as well, but never with a clear view, always a silhouette. Keep in mind, there are no bears or anything of the sort around here that could or would do that to a deer. On another occasion, some years later, my mom recalled walking our old golden retriever near those woods. Again, the retriever was the sweetest dog in the world and loved everyone, but my mom came across an old creepy lady feeding and talking quietly to some wild rabbits on one of the trails. Immediately, our dog starts growling at the woman, something my mom has never heard her do before. My mom immediately apologizes to the lady and walked around her with the dog tugging at her. As she continued to walk, she came across a circle of rabbits all standing perfectly still, just staring at her. My mom promptly ran home. My mother and uncles have other stories, but I always thought they were full of crap, either just imagining things or making them up to scare me, since I've played in those woods so many times and never had an issue. However, my older brother used to go on nightly walks through those woods, and he told me he had seen the red-eyed monster, and other mysterious, creepy encounters. I was around 15 or 16 at the time, and I loved ghost stories, and never encountered anything like it. So I was able to convince him to go out ghost hunting with me. Of course, I thought it was just a bunch of silly BS anyway. The first time we went out, we had a few friends over. We were hanging out late at night, smoking some weed, telling ghost stories. Of course, we mentioned the haunted forest. We were living at a house down the street from our grandparents at the time, so still practically next door to these woods. My friends all thought it'd be fun if we went out into the forest and searched for some ghosts or monsters and had a good laugh. We waited until about 2:30 and headed out. There was a fairly large group of us, maybe 6 to 8 people, including my brother and myself. As we were walking through this pitch-black forest using our phones as flashlights, I kid you not, all of our phones turned off at the same time. Of course, the girls in our group started to freak out, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure we all did, but we were all kind of just laughing at the nonsense of it all. There was no noise anywhere other than us. The forest was completely dead silent. And after a few minutes, everyone was able to get their phones turned on and working again. We decided to head home at that point. Could have been a freak accident, but I'm not really sure. The second time, I went with my brother and a couple other friends, this time a much smaller crew. I believe maybe 3 to 4 of us all together. Same as before, we thought it'd be fun and silly to go ghost hunting at night and see my brother's little Sasquatch friend. This time it was different, however. The moment we entered the forest, things immediately got weird. The forest felt unnaturally dark, and our lights barely reached the tree line on the other side. We brought flashlights this time. We also immediately felt a large sense of dread, danger, and adrenaline, and like we were being watched from all sides. Quite frankly, it was terrifying, as only moments before we were joking and laughing and telling ghost stories. But we all immediately shut up and felt it, not even 30 yards from the entrance to the forest. Whatever, we continued slowly walking deeper into the woods, talking and nervously laughing as we peered about with our flashlights. The forest was dead silent when suddenly, all at once, we heard what sounded like what we can only describe as several thousand monkeys screaming and screeching at us from the treetops and tree lines in all directions, all around us. The noise was overwhelmingly loud and deafening. I've never heard anything like it or since. It's hard to describe, but angry, hateful monkeys, all crying out in anger at us, is the best way to describe it. And those cries were definitely targeting at us. The sense of danger and dread immediately jumped to number 11, and we waste no time in turning tail and sprinting for the forest exit. The sounds of 1,000 lost souls screaming incredibly loud, chasing us from above and around. Obviously, we saw no animals or anything in the trees or around us when flashing our lights up and about. But we're also more preoccupied with getting out of there. Like I said, we were only perhaps a few hundred yards from the entrance of the forest, so it took us no time to get out. The moment we stepped out of the forest and into the light of a nearby street lamp, the forest fell dead silent. Not a rustle, not a whisper. For those of you who are wondering, there are not any wild monkeys in these woods, nor anything else I could think that would make those sounds. Man, that was obviously loud and terrifying. The third and final time, I worked up the courage to go ghost hunting and find these evil little monkey once and for all. Sealed the deal for me. I will never forget what happened on that night. A few months or perhaps a year or so after our encounter with the angry monkeys, I was still upset that I had never experienced anything with the red-eyed creature, and convinced myself that prior experience was probably just some rabid fox or something. It wasn't. My older brother agreed to go into the woods one last time with me, as he really didn't fear anything, and to be honest, neither did I. I was some edgy-ass 15 or 16-year-old anyway. This time, if I heard them yelling at me, I was going to yell right back at them and demand to show themselves. Or something, I don't know. I just wanted to prove myself that night, really. And that I wasn't crazy. The setting was perfect, the full moon. It was 2 a.m. My brother brought a couple of knives and a throwing knife. And I brought a large quarterstaff. I had a black belt training in bow staff from my childhood. We set out on our little adventure. From the very start, things were different from our previous encounter, for the better. There were no unnatural feelings of being watched, no sense of fear or dread, no sense of panic. We walked all through the woods, sticking to the major paths. The occasional cricket chirp and sounds of the nearby creek flowing downriver were the only noises we heard. At one point, a bush I was walking past bristled, and something fled away, causing me to almost piss myself, but I figured it was probably a raccoon or a fox, or something that we had spooked. After about an hour of pointless walking around, we decided to pack it in. As we started heading back home, my brother would occasionally stop in the path and begin listening intently. For what? I don't know, as I heard nothing around us. He just said he thought he heard something. A few minutes later, he stopped and grabbed my arm tightly. I looked up at him and asked WTF was the big idea, as we were almost out of the forest and I just wanted to get home at this point. He quickly hushed me and told me to shut up, so I did. Then he whispered that someone is following us, though he never once turned around or anything. At that precise moment, I caught the worst goosebumps of my life and felt the presence staring at us from behind. I very slowly began to turn and look behind us. As I did, I saw, a shadow or a silhouette, literally creeping up behind us. The best way to describe what I saw was a large 8-foot figure with glowing red eyes, silently walking down the path towards us. Once it saw that I had seen it, it immediately crouched low and dashed straight out of the path and into the tree line. At a full sprint, but without making a noise and staring at us. I remember just yelling at my brother, "Run!" And we ran. This thing chased us. I had never felt more deep fear, more danger and raw hatred emanating from someone or something before. I knew it was going to kill us, and we just sprinted for our lives through this maze of forest. It chased us the entire way, just barely behind us, and it must have been going fast to keep up because we were booking it. I never turned around once, nor did my brother, for that would have slowed us down even a tiny bit. But we didn't have to. We sensed it was closing in. I could feel it reaching out to grab me by my neck collar, just inches keeping myself from it as I ran for my dear life. At this point, we could also hear it kind of kicking up the gravel and dirt just inches behind us. Knowing there was no way we'd make it to the proper exit in time, I yelled to my brother to follow me off the main path and through a small hidden trail that I knew from my young childhood. Gloriously, we burst out of the forest and into the lighted lawn of what used to be my best friend's backyard. As soon as we got out of the forest and into the lights of the yard, we immediately stopped and turned to face the attacker. But it just stood there, just out of sight and in the tree line, menacingly glaring at us with hatred and animosity. I never got a good view of it, not like I had when I saw it the first time on the trail creeping up at us, but I could sense it was there, and almost barely see a large, almost 8-foot figure shadow moving amongst the tree line, staring us down. Full of adrenaline, I yelled at it to come out into the light and fight, instead of creeping around like a sissy. I had my staff out in front of me, and my brother had a knife in each hand, and we were prepared to defend ourselves. Suddenly something hit me in the chest. Stunned, I looked down and saw a few pieces of gravel from the main path we were on earlier standing at my feet. It threw it at me. My brother saw it as well, and immediately threw one of his knives into the forest from where the rocks had come, and we turned and ran home. We have never been back to those woods since, and will never be caught in them past dusk if I ever go out at all. I don't know if it's just some angry hobo or something living in those woods or what, but from memory, the best I can describe what I saw was a very large, human-like figure walking, creeping quietly upon us, and once it saw that I had noticed it, it hunched down low and sprinted silently into the tree line straight for us. I have never felt such danger or hatred in my entire life. I know for a fact that whatever or whoever it was, it meant to harm us greatly. I've since heard stories of crawlers and other such things, and perhaps this was an example of one, I don't know. But my brother swears on his life that he didn't set it up for someone to scare us, and that he was just as terrified at the time as I was. Oh, he never did find that throwing knife. Dumbass actually went back to look for it in the morning. Unfortunately, my brother never got to see it. He said he heard and sensed it following us, but he never got a good view of it. Anyway, I don't know what we dealt with in the forest, but I highly recommend everyone to stay far, far away from it at night. And yeah, for the skeptic, I can agree that it's unlikely that it was a person. In fact, I'm certain it wasn't. I've always thought and referred to it as the creeper. And yes, it did have glowing red eyes. Tonight's second encounter. This is my first paranormal or experience, encounter, whatnot. I spent the night at a friend's house. We'll call him Sam and Bob for privacy reasons. It was Sam, Bob, Jeff, and myself. Sam and Bob are brothers. Anyway, Jeff and I had come over and brought our dirt bikes, so naturally we spent the day riding. We also went to the store and picked up some fireworks to let off at night. We had to quit riding at around 7. Keep in mind, this is eastern Kentucky in the middle of the woods and farmland because Sam and Bob's family are loaded with money. Since we had finished riding, it was getting pretty dark, we decided to light some fireworks. We had been lighting some small firecrackers and fountains and whatnot. But Jeff had the idea to have a Roman candle war. In the middle of the war, when we were grabbing new candles, we heard a whoosh, which ended up being a used Roman candle firing a shot in the grass, but we didn't know it immediately. And Sam made the comment that it was probably a Wendigo, unto which Bob and Sam got into a huge argument about if Wendigos live in Kentucky or not. This blew up and ended with a resolving pillow fight on the trampoline. After we were all gassed out, I decided we should all spend the night on this trampoline. At around 9 or 10 p.m., Jeff and I spotted some coyote at the tree line across the road from us. We all went inside because it freaked us out, because I'm from the city and I don't like wild animals. Also, it stunk real bad. It smelled like a dead rabbit or deer. Probably the coyotes got something. So we all went inside but left the pillows and blankets on the trampoline. After about an hour inside, Sam tells us we forgot the bedding on the trampoline and he wanted me and Jeff to go and get it. I, terrified of the dark, beg Jeff to come with me. He agrees. We throw our socks and shoes on and head to the back door, onto the patio. We go down the stairs and toward the trampoline. I'm behind Jeff, grabbing the back of his shirt, and he has a flashlight pointing straight. I'm looking to the right toward the road, looking for the coyotes. But I heard a thud sound to our left. I look over there, and there is a line of 4 trees parallel to us. They are shaped in a V starting at the base. I don't see anything, but I tell Jeff to point the flashlight over there. We don't see anything, so he swings it straight and keeps walking. I hear the thud this time, but this time Jeff hears it as well, and it's much, much louder, and it's still to our left. Jeff swings the flashlight in between the second and third tree in the row, and it's walking straight with us, not at us, but toward the same direction we're going. As soon as the flashlight lands on it, it behind the third tree, and now it stands up in the middle of the V of the tree. It stood about 4 or 5 heads taller than me, and I'm 5'9". It was incredibly skinny, as in I could see its ribs through its skin. It was a bright white, not like fluorescent white, but when the flashlight hit it, it definitely had a glow. Its eyes were the scariest part, 2 big reflective orbs that were a dark gray blackish, but here's the catch. They were reflective in the sense like the eyes illuminated the flashlight back at us. Also, its hands were gigantic, its fingers wrapped around the tree trunk. They were super long. Jeff looked over and I screamed and he just stood still. I turned around and he was still standing but dropped the flashlight. I still had his shirt in my hand and I yanked him hard and he just takes off in front of me. I sprint past him and back up the porch stairs. He falls on the stairs and I run to the door and open it and wait for him. As soon as he runs through, I slam the door and shut and lock it. The deadbolt shut the curtains, and jumped back onto their couch. Sam and Bob were putting their socks and shoes on when we ran inside because they had heard me scream my lungs out. Jeff is standing on the couch, and he starts babbling and tells them what we saw. I start hyperventilating. I have anxiety and asthma, and not an asthma attack. I haven't had one in years. I stopped carrying my emergency inhaler a long time ago. Sam is bewildered, and I started to cry while I was having my fit. I cried for almost an hour and didn't fall asleep until almost 3 in the morning. I woke up and packed and called my parents to come and scoop me up. Tonight's final encounter. This happened 14 years ago. My boyfriend and I went to a graveyard one night because he had told me a story about he had seen something there. He didn't really want to take me, but I insisted. He said he had heard stories about this place, and if you go back there and sit every night, you'd eventually see it. He said he had finally seen the thing himself on the 3rd or 4th consecutive night visiting. It's like a man-like and a gray being an alien, but he had only caught a glimpse of it and never went back afterward. I remember him saying he had car trouble when it appeared as well. Well, I couldn't resist. I wanted to see it for myself. On the 3rd night we saw it. We were sitting in the dark with the moon being the only source of light. Man, we were dumb. And we both suddenly got a creeped out feeling for the first time since we had been there. We changed our minds about the whole thing and decided to leave and never come back. But, lo and behold, the car, my car, that has never had any trouble before, and not again for the years after this incident, would not start. My boyfriend was driving that night and kept trying, and it did eventually start up. When the headlights came on full force, we saw it standing right in front of the car. It was 7 feet tall and a gray color. In fact, it looked like a moving statue. It was kind of bent over, just looking into the windshield at us, and we were freaked out. Finally, it kind of shifted, and the car started. The thing darted off to the left so quickly I knew that if it came to the side windows, we'd both be dead within a minute. It was so fast. But it just stood to the side of the car watching us as we drove away. The cemetery was laid out where the gravel road, Old Cemetery Road, went around the whole cemetery in a circle and looped back around, so the entrance is also the exit. We were spinning tires and slinging gravel the whole way around, but when we passed the place where the thing was, it had not moved. It had been standing there, watching us go around the gravel circle, and it let us leave, but it was looking directly at me. The passenger side of the car was facing it, and I couldn't really make out any features because it was dark, but I was overcome with the most severe depression I had ever felt in my life. In that moment, when I was looking back at the thing, it was like everyone and everything I ever cared about my whole life was burned right before my eyes. The pain and hurt was almost tangible, and it took my breath away. That night, when I was home and finally able to sleep somehow, I had a dream that the thing was calling to me from the graveyard, begging me to come back. It was harmless and miserable, stuck in the old cemetery forever, and it was alone, so alone. When I woke up, I was determined to go back and find the creature, but before I could even tell my boyfriend, I got calls from him and my two best friends. All three of them had nightmares where this thing had brutally murdered and mutilated me. The two girls who called me didn't know anything about the graveyard incident the night before. It was so late when we got back home, I didn't tell anyone about it. I just went to bed. My boyfriend dreamt that I had gone back to the place because I felt bad for it, so he drove me out there. When he got there, he found the thing ripping me apart, tearing me open. For a long time, I had dreams about it, saying, "I won't hurt you. Please come back and help me. I'm suffering." And for a while, I had to fight the urge to go back, even after 3 people told me about their nightmares. The pill isn't strong at all anymore. I guess it faded with time and kids and adulting, but I do think about it often, and I do kind of get a little itch to drive through. I don't know. It would be dumb as hell, but there's always been a little nagging voice that whispers about the thing we saw that night. It had a masculine physique, but no genitalia, and its eyes were completely black. No iris or pupil or anything, just black, inky nothingness. I've been searching all of these years, but only pics I've seen that look even remotely like it are, well, I don't know, wendigos, but not the ones with fur or antlers, just the grayish humanoid sexless thing. The best way I could describe it is actually it looked like a statue to me. All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that keeps this channel growing and going and gives people a place to share their experiences, ideas, and theories. Thank you. Everyone stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they're dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their life sometime. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.